In the years after Eden, the world outside the garden had already begun to reveal the consequences of choice. Adam and Eve, now aware of their own vulnerability, raised children who carried both the hope of life and the weight of inherited tendencies. Among them were Cain and Abel, two brothers whose paths would reveal the enduring tension between obedience and rebellion, between heartfelt devotion and hollow ritual. Abel, tending the flocks, offered sacrifices that came from the purity of his heart, an expression of gratitude and trust in God. Cain, working the soil, brought his offerings too, yet they lacked the sincerity that Abel's bore. It was not the gift itself that mattered, for even simple fruits and grains could honor the Creator, but the spirit behind it, the measure of faith and humility. God accepted Abel's offering because it reflected genuine love and reverence. Cain's offering, while outwardly adequate, revealed a heart distracted by pride and self-interest. The first true test of worship had been presented, and Cain's response would determine the trajectory of his life. At first, jealousy stirred quietly in Cain's heart, like a shadow in the corner of a room. He watched as Abel's devotion found favor, and his own labor seemed unnoticed. Yet the Lord in his mercy spoke to Cain, cautioning him that sin was ready to take hold, but that he could master it through vigilance and choice. God had not abandoned him. He had provided the opportunity to correct the course, to redirect anger into introspection, to transform envy into self-examination. Cain's failure, therefore, was not inevitable. It was a deliberate turning away from instruction, a decision to entertain resentment rather than humility. But the shadow of jealousy grew heavier each day. Cain spoke to Abel, yet his words carried the weight of bitterness. His heart hardened, and in that hardness, he plotted the unthinkable. When he lured Abel to the field, the first act of human violence unfolded. Abel's life was taken by his own brother, and with it, the fragile trust of humanity's early generations. Sin, which had already entered the world through disobedience, now manifested in murder, showing that rebellion, once nurtured, does not remain hidden. It spreads, corrupts, and destroys. The Lord confronted Cain, not with anger alone, but with sorrow and the weight of justice. "Where is your brother Abel?" he asked, and in Cain's evasive reply, the first record of human deceit appeared. "Am I my brother's keeper?" Yet in that question, God's purpose remained clear. Every human life bears responsibility for others, and every action leaves consequences that cannot be undone. Cain's punishment was exile, yet even in this judgment, God's mercy was evident. He placed a mark upon him, a protection, signaling that justice need not always end in annihilation. Reflecting on Cain's story, it becomes clear that the measure of a life is not in outward actions alone, but in the condition of the heart. Worship, obedience, and relationship with God cannot be reduced to ritual or obligation. They are choices that flow from the depths of character. Cain's tragedy was not simply that he killed his brother, but that he allowed envy, pride, and anger to dominate, ignoring the guidance that could have preserved both his heart and his brother's life. In contrast, Abel's legacy, though brief in years, endures in the eternal record of faithful devotion. The first murder, the first sibling's loss, was a somber testament to the reality that every human being is entrusted with moral responsibility. Even in a fallen world, the choices we make reveal our inner alignment with God's principles. There is no neutrality in devotion. True faith manifests in decisions that honor God and respect life. And while the world outside the garden had begun to darken, a pattern was already emerging. Rebellion leads to destruction, while faith, even in humble expressions, preserves life and aligns with the Creator's design. As Cain wandered from the presence of his family, he carried the weight of his actions, yet God's protection remained. This protection, though it did not erase the consequences, affirmed a divine truth. Justice and mercy coexist. Humanity, even in error, remains under God's watchful care, and the path of righteousness remains open to those willing to choose it. Abel's faithfulness, Cain's failure, and the lessons that follow would echo through generations, shaping the moral and spiritual landscape of the world. In the story of Cain and Abel, the first acts of choice, jealousy, and violence reveal not only the danger of unchecked sin, but also the enduring power of sincere devotion. The legacy of faith is built not in ease, but in the decisions we make when faced with rivalry, temptation, and the silent call of conscience. Worship is never mere formality. It is the reflection of a heart in harmony with God's will, capable of shaping the course of history through fidelity and love. And even in the aftermath of failure, mercy whispers the possibility of redemption, showing that every life, no matter how marred by error, carries the potential for transformation if turned toward God. And so Cain wandered, marked and exiled, carrying the weight of his first great sin. Yet beyond the horizon of his sorrow, the story of humanity was only beginning. In the midst of a corrupted world, a line of faith would continue through Seth, a son born to preserve the hope of obedience. From Seth's line would come Enoch, a man who walked so closely with God that darkness could not touch him. Their lives would reveal how devotion, even in a fallen world, could shape the course of generations. The answers to hope, faith, and the power of walking with God were waiting just beyond the next chapter of history. Don't miss it. Follow and subscribe to continue this journey.